Welcome, mere mortalites, to another round of the conversations. Today, I have the host of the 5-8 Take, a beautiful Brazilian, and the owner of the worth protecting brand, which the 5-8 Take actually falls under. It is DIOGO COELHO. I'm gonna have to screw your middle name, Coelho.
Coelho. No, I like that. I like
Coelho.
that. I like that.
I could get the last name right because I read the book The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. So
yes.
I know that
Familiar
one pretty
with that.
good.
Yeah, you're quite you did quite a few of you'd read books and then you'd review them. You've done a lot of them, and I've come across some of them a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I've got to be a couple, like at least 100 deep now on the book reviews, which I guess is similar to you. In essence, I've sort of split off the Mere Mortals book reviews. It falls under the Mere Mortals, but it's like its own thing, I guess.
Yeah, I like it, man. I like it.
Yeah. So I've smashed down a lot of books.
What's your favorite? Give me a top 5 of your 100.
Okay, so of the
Not
ones
in
that I've actually
existence,
read
of the ones that
recently.
the ones that
Okay.
you've done.
So there would be Lost Horizon by James Hilton. That's a real good, I suppose, like adventure, but it really just nailed a couple of things I'm really into, sort of like some of the religious aspects related to like Eastern philosophy. It's got, adventure, mountain type scenery, which I'm really into. A real nice twist ending at the end of it, which was, just a really, really good book. Man's Search for Meaning, I'd chuck in there, sort of quintessential by Viktor Frankl. The Gulag Archipelago, that was actually the best book review I've got, like in terms of viewage. So
right.
people seem to really like that as well. Life on the Mississippi by Mark Twain. He's a fantastic writer, Mark Twain. And I'll add in The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. That's also a really good book as well.
Yeah, that's a banger. It's a banger. Yeah. That's for the listeners right there. You guys just got a quick summary of what to get.
That's it. That's it, man. But enough about me, man. We're here to chat a little bit about you. And we connected quite a long time ago. It was right near the start of I guess Juan and I's journey on the Mere Mortals, and you were doing the 5-8 Take, which, as we said, is now sort of fallen under a little bit of a different brand, and it's had a couple of changes to it as well. But man, what I really wanted to talk to you about, and we'll just jump right into it, was you got banned from podcasting. I didn't even think that was possible, man. So I haven't followed enough to really get all the details, and obviously you were banned from podcasting, so I couldn't find out because you weren't podcasting. So could you just give us like a little lead up to that, and I guess like what the hell happened, man? Because that just seems so insane to me.
It's bonkers, man. I didn't think that could possibly happen. I think it must be the first podcast in Australian history. A podcast is a young medium anyway.
Yeah.
So to me, I didn't even think that was possible. So when I started, it was sort of just, it was a lot of comedy in there because I'm just a big fan of comedy. So we do a lot of comedy stuff. We'd look at some news here and there and poke fun at a lot of things. And then it's sort of, as things progressed in the real world, the podcast started to take a shape because we always wanted to be the Australian podcast, like the go-to for just Australian banter, Australian news, just what's happening over here. So we always looked at the podcast as a like society and culture commentary. And since society and culture took a hard turn, I think so did the podcast. And then I started getting, I saw, because I'm deep into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I won my comp last year. So the ADCC in Australia for my 75 kilos, mate. I cut down in a carnivore diet and I won my comp. And I saw this Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu person get treated by the media quite bad. They were an activist, and then I saw them on TV being labelled the same as our Prime Minister Gladys, who's corrupt and she's fallen off now. she made fun of him. She started tweeting about him, and on the news, she started making fun of him. So then I knew the guy and I've trained with him. So I'm like, well, like that's the media is just like, that's not what I've seen in real life. So then I hit him up and I'm like, come on. And then he came on and I let him speak his piece. And then after that, other people started contacting me like, oh, can we come on? There's this thing and that thing happening. And I'm an open guy. I'm an open-minded person. I just want to like hear what people have to say. And then so it started taking a change to what I'm naturally inclined to do, is understand people's passions and how they get and derive to their understandings. And that started to be more the podcast. So then these people started contacting me. And then I didn't know that they were, I guess, some major organizers of some, protest that's occurred here. And I guess I was just started to get targeted. I don't know what it was. Like, it just seemed like it was because like, I guess I was giving them a voice where other outlets weren't. And we sort of had this weird grasp of a certain niche, but because of our background, others were listening. I don't know how it worked out, but we really got a target on our back. And then when the protest occurred, they
So just to give a bit of context, I guess, when did you first start the podcast? It was in 2019, was it?
No, so I had started podcasting before 2019, and I had a long break, like quite a long break, because it was called Well Done. I should get the mug. It should you should see this mug, dude. It is hilarious. So we've had a few little brand switches. So yeah, it was a little while ago that I started everything. It's real Joe Rogan-esque.
Nice.
It's so Joe Rogan-esque. Well, that's like, he's a big influence on me. So yeah, so it was a little while ago. And then this all occurred, and
yeah. So just the other, because people might be coming at this at a later date. So
yeah,
I'm thinking you started roughly around us, so it would have been like 2019, 2020. Obviously, March 2020 was when the coronavirus really started to pick up and whatnot. And you're in Melbourne, of all places, so you got to receive the honor of the biggest lockdown, I think, in the world.
Sydney. So
Sydney.
I was in Sydney, but a lot of people that flew in from Melbourne. Like, there was this account called Australian versus the Agenda, which he got to like 300,000 followers. He's got to ridiculous amounts. And then he flew over because he also got interviewed by Vice after that podcast. So he flew over and he came on. And like, I think it's those types of things. I'm an open-minded, like, come on, like, I don't have some machine telling whatever. And that guy is, he's in jail now. He got out today. So there you go. He got out today.
Yeah.
So Anthony Kaluth, that does Australian versus the Agenda. So I didn't know the guy. I've only met him once on the podcast, and I think it's things like that I was targeted for. And in the July 24th, they got an image of me. It's essentially, I'm against lockdowns. I'm for businesses. I'm for small businesses completely, wholeheartedly. And on July 24th, I think they saw me there when you couldn't be at the protest. And then so they put a piece on Channel 9 essentially saying I'm the organizer. I got 50,000 people out to the streets of Sydney, which is
yeah, right.
bananas, bro. Like that's out there, eh?
And you're
And
like
then,
looking at your small podcast numbers, being like, I don't
yeah,
think this is happening.
like what are you talking about? Like it makes no sense. Like, but then after that, it was a couple of weeks later when essentially we had the do you know a guy called Friendly Geordies?
Yeah. I'm aware of him.
So the asphyxiated unit, the counterterrorism unit, the same one that got him, his producer, they came in guns blazing into our place, into our studio, and it was insane. Like they came in with like machine guns. They had like partner in like kitchen floor with 3 dudes like that with a gun. Like they came in from the back. It was like 50 people around. I don't know who they think I was, but they came in, and I got the same lawyer as Jordan, which is great. And he's doing a lot well in his case. And one of the bail conditions, there's a couple of ridiculous bail conditions. So all of this was to get these bail conditions, and they did this. It's clear that they did this for the bail conditions. And one of the conditions was that I can't do my podcast and I can't participate in any podcast. So I couldn't even have interviews going out, and I can't like, comment, or share anything that went against the health orders. And it's just and a list of others, but just ridiculous stuff like that. And that was the block on the podcast. It was, I just couldn't have interviews and I couldn't do interviews.
Yeah. These sort of things, you'd normally think there's, I guess, like a lead up to it, i.e. like, if someone was looking from the outside, I don't really have enough info to like look at what the mainstream media was presenting of you. And obviously I'm chatting with you to hear your side, but normally you would think there's like a tit for tat. Like they're like, no, don't do that. And then you might go closer to the line and do something. And then they're like, oh, we're going to do something. Was there any of that? Do you feel like you were aggravating anything by, I don't know, having people on that they were saying, don't do that? Like I guess what I'm asking was like, was there a lead up to them, physically bashing down your door and coming in and, guns blazing and whatnot into like a podcasting studio? What are you going to use, like your words against them?
It's interesting because last year in Sydney, laws passed that words are assault. So if I'm to raise my voice and you feel that I assaulted you, technically in court I've assaulted you. So I didn't get any warnings. I just had people want to have a voice or something, and I'm happy to hear. I'm happy to hear any points of views. So in terms of getting a message, in terms of anything like that, none of that occurred. And now, and it shows that none of that occurred because we're completely winning in court. Like I can podcast again now. I've taken bail things out. We've moved places. Before I had to stay at that location. I wasn't able to move at all. But throughout the courts, we're winning. And now we're getting notice from our lawyers that they might even throw out my case completely because it really it just doesn't make sense what happened. And the censorship is ridiculous. This whole thing is ridiculous. And to have a podcast blocked in that way shows the state that we're in.
Yeah, for sure. What were the actual like charges brought against you?
So with my mobile phone. So there's 2 ways that you can look at this, right? So I have there's the whole footage, right? So as I said, assault now is classified as hurting someone, right? So whilst I had my phone and people because I'm filming the event of what was going on July 24th.
So this was one of the protests protesting against the COVID lockdown and rules and regulations and whatnot.
It's pretty much one of the biggest protests that Sydney's had for quite a long time. And by the way, I'm not a protester. Like that's the one that I went to. Like, yep. That's it. Like, so then
you chose the wrong one.
I'm there. And then, so I'm filming, and I don't know if this is targeted. I don't know what it is, right? I'm filming, and whilst having my my phone in one hand, I assaulted a police officer, 2 police officers, and I stopped an arrest. Was having like one phone, and I filmed everything, and it's getting thrown out. Absolutely not true. These are to get the warrant to get the bail on me. So that's the essentially the events that occurred.
Yeah.
And I think that's it. What else do they have on me?
How long after the protest was them, knocking down into your studio?
2 weeks. 2 weeks, I believe.
Yeah. like if they seriously considered you like I don't know, a danger to society.
Oh yeah.
They're taking 2 to 3 weeks to.
So the other charges that I have on me, right? So I love martial arts. Another one is nunchucks, right?
Cool thing.
I had these $7 nunchuck in the studio, right, as a prop. $7 from Alibaba, foam, kid's toy, and they're charging me 14 years for that.
As
it's
like
a dangerous weapon in Australia to have nunchucks.
Far out, man.
And these are foam nunchucks. So that's the another charge that they have on me.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Like this is bonkers. What? So you're saying you had the, I guess, like the lockdown on you being able to podcast, being able to like and comment as well, which is, just as dangerous, obviously, as speaking words.
Yeah.
I guess what was the time difference between them? How long were you in this like kind of middle zone before you could start getting some of these charges and whatnot dropped?
So another thing about time, which is hilarious to me, is they came in, right? They didn't have their body cams on at all. They switched. They were like, they wouldn't let us film when they came in. They said a bunch of stuff, and then they were like, we're filming. You're not allowed to film. Halfway through, he looks down and is like, oh, my body cam's not on. And then he goes to film halfway through. They also, on all their paperwork, say that they came in at around 6:30, and then the whole thing went until 7 something, right, on their paperwork. But I was processed on their paperwork at 6:20. So none of it makes sense. None of it makes sense at all. And it's just a mess situation, man. And how this thing, this entire like censorship scenario, it's one that like I haven't really seen before. Like I couldn't post at all for a couple of days because I had to, go back and forth with the lawyers, because when you're in the bail that they put me in, it's weird. They had weird powers during this time that because the courts are packed, if I did anything at all, I'd go to jail for the 38 years that I'm facing for all of this. So even if I posted something that went against the health orders, I would have been gone. So the videos that I made a couple days later that I couldn't podcast, I couldn't like and comment on shares, but I could still make videos, and I could only make videos because in the court. So check this. In the court, usually, I'm new to all of this, by the way. I've never had a criminal record, like new to all this court stuff, right? In New South Wales, the court person that's like the police, that's your block, like let's say your area, your neighborhood, wherever you live. Let's say you live in, what's a suburb?
Brisbane, Morningside.
Morningside. Let's say you live in Morningside, right? You got the police would say, Morningside police suggests that this person doesn't do this. With my case, it was New South Wales police, the whole state requested that I can't access the internet. And then the judge was like, what? What are you guys talking about? And then the judges couldn't even, so this means I wouldn't even be able to access my emails. Like I wouldn't, like literally.
Like banking, the sort of essentials.
Banking, anything. I couldn't access internet, bro. And then they, when they.
Yeah, probably be good for your mental health, eh?
Yeah, definitely. And then when the judge was like, this is too weird, like I don't understand this, then they dropped their request, and then their request was like, he can't access social media. And then still she was like, well, this doesn't make sense. And then they came to the agreement that, you know, I just can't post anything that goes against the health orders.
So that's the New South Wales health orders or the Australian? Yeah.
See, that changes all the time as well. It could change tomorrow. Like, for example, the health orders in New South Wales, I think the word person can go outside, but then the health official just signed one just for this weekend that everyone in the city can protest, which is like, are we in a pandemic or what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, why would you sign that? So, and then, so I couldn't post anything that goes against him. I couldn't like, comment, or share anything against it. And I couldn't do the podcast as well. So the video that I made, I went at the media. So I made this video, and it got a lot of traction, and a lot of people shared it. And I'm thankful for everyone that did. And I did support to try and clear the name. We still got a whole media press that's part of our law package, so we still got to counter all of that, but it was just a little press. So then, you know, like I wasn't aware that the media bury a lot of people and without any facts at all. Like, and when you're in custody, you're sort of, it's a weird thing. They can essentially write whatever they want about you. It's not like America where you can, you know, sue them for defamation for particular things. It's a weird thing. Like once I finish the court case and it's get dropped out, I think then under Australian laws, I can go back and say, all right, now you need to take this down. And if they then choose not to, then I think I can sue them for defamation. But yeah, it's all things that I'm learning now that I didn't even know existed, and all because I do a podcast. What?
What? Have you heard? So your lawyer, I'm guessing, would have looked into the, I guess, conditions being put against you and trying to see if they are legal in one sense, which is, you know, I'm wondering how much of it was like special time powers that were granted to the authorities because of COVID, and, you know, could they have done this pre-COVID, for example? Would that have been something possible? And do you know if anyone has had conditions similar to yours put on them before?
Not to do with podcast. I know that John Barilaro tried to take all of Friendly Geordie's videos offline. I think this is a new thing. I really do. And that's why our thing from the start was always, how far can we push the date of, not how far can we push the content, how far can we push the date of the entire court case until, you know, we do phase things out a bit, but it just seems like everything's fallen apart now. So from what we're seeing, I got one coming up in December is our next hearing, but it seems like by April is my understanding that a lot's changing, and that's, I don't know where these lawyers are getting all of these things. He's the best that you can get in media and politics. So, but yeah, that's been the plan, and I do think it could only be during these times that their powers are this high, because through these counterterrorism measures, they're made for like bikies, they're made for like, you know, terrorists. Like, they're not made for media personalities, and these new medias like coming up. It just, I don't know if it's it must be under these new laws that it's done. That's my only justification for it all. But to an actual answer for you, I can't give that. I can only perceive what it is.
For sure. I just want to clarify one thing before we jump on to maybe censorship and some of those topics. Did they actually break down your door? I said that and I assumed that, but I don't actually know if that's true. That's
another thing. This case is so ridiculous. It's out of this world, man. Like, it honestly is. Another thing is that they had keys to my place. So they actually just opened the door and came in, and which is completely illegal. Like, and the warrant that they have is like the most basic possible like thing that you can get. So, as I said, words in Sydney last year, 2021. Yeah, last year. Actually, it might have been 2019, just before 2020. The laws were passed where, you know, now vocally you can assault someone. So by anyone being at any rallies or anywhere, they can essentially, and there's a police presence there. The police can essentially say you assaulted them just by you being there. And that can grant, like, you still should go through a bunch of steps to do this. Like, I'm not saying that this is something that, you know, cops can do like that. There's still processes that you have to go through, but that's what warranted them to do this. And they didn't come in with a bang, which under the warrant and under that team and under that unit, that's what they're supposed to do. But no, they got keys and came in through the door, which is illegal in it. So that's illegal. Not filming when you're coming in is illegal. Writing the wrong times and the wrong things is illegal. Like, bro.
Yeah. I mean, you'd feel that just arresting a dude for talking as well is illegal, but
you'd want to wish that was the case in an amazing country that we have.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I'm sort of intrigued into the, like, honestly, man, I hate the topic of COVID. I'm not really a fan of even like just government type things, but when it gets to a point where I'm sort of like observing something like this happening to you, it just like, honestly, it scares me, man. It's like, what the fuck happened there? How, no matter what sort of happened, I can't see justification why, and like, you know, even if you had assaulted someone, I don't see how that relates anything to podcasting. Like, you can be like a fucking murderer if you want to, but if you want to start up a podcast and just speak your mind and have people on who also speak their mind, you know, within reason, as long as they're not calling for assault, as long as they're not, you know, going against any of those general principles that we say. In terms of, you know, violence and incitement and things like that. Just talking, man. And I mean, you know, they went the extra step by liking, like, what? How is you liking or commenting on something really going to do anything like that? That just seems so ridiculous.
It's insane, man. It's insane. I was never really into like politics, dude. Like the inception, like, of the podcast was higher thought, comedy, and sports. That's it. and like what's happened has just, you know, it forces you to look at like a certain direction. And that's why on Worth Protecting, we try and like do a whole different thing and go back to philosophy, go back to mentality, go back to nutrition. But I don't know, it's a weird target. Like I've always thought, like, isn't there like bigger fish to fry? Like why do me like that? You know what I mean? Like I'm not doing like, I don't know. It's weird. Maybe they saw something that I didn't. I don't know. There's also that, like, and yeah, it's weird. And it's hilarious as well because throughout all the episodes that we've done, I'm like, even when guest comes in, I'm supporting police always. So it's funny because now we're like doing a compilation of all the times that I'm supporting police and say like, you got to do right by police and so on and so forth. And is like, part of me is hoping it does get to court because it'll show the ridiculousness of it. And I want that on record. But what it's looking like is everything is like going to be dropped, which is like, it's just annoying at the end of the day. Like, what was it for? Like, what was it for? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Has it, I mean, like embittered you or made you, I mean, you're going to have a different change of mindset with regards to the government and I suppose even just maybe the nature of power in general after that. Has that, like, how has that affected your mentality, I guess, this whole thing going on?
See, a lot of people would fold or they'll have resentment. I gotta thank Stoicism for the mentality that I have. I think it's Marcus Aurelius. He said, begin at once to live and count each day like it's a separate day as a separate life. So that happened. The next day, I move on. I don't really keep resentment in my heart. I don't think that's healthy. I look at everything quite without judgment. And I think that's how I move and maneuver. I'm not a guy that's like tear down the system. I'm a guy that's like, I'm sure we can figure out a way because there's not only one way. I don't think there's ever only one way for any scenario. So I don't really have that resentment for police. I don't have resentment for the government. I don't have resentment for anything that happens. I got pity for Gladys, to be honest with you. But yeah, I don't hold that on my heart. I just keep it moving.
That's beautiful, man. That's probably one of the wisest things I've I've heard in a long time.
Appreciate it, man.
We're on the topic of Stoicism, so let's dive deep, man. What sparked your interest in this? How long have you been following, I guess, the Stoic philosophy? Who's your favorite amongst the many notable characters that there are? Do you have enlighten me?
It's gotta be like the one, the Neo of Stoicism for me. Marcus Aurelius is the way that he wrote Meditations is one of the most beautiful, beautifully expressed book. And he wrote it over a lot of time. And what's beautiful about it, it's almost like he wrote it with no ego. He started the book by thanking people. So he thanked Stoics before him. And he was an emperor. He's one of the 5 golden emperors. And he was one of the youngest emperors of all time. And he was thanking like Epictetus, who's a slave. So he's thanking a slave for the mentality that he has. And it's a beautiful introduction. And the whole Meditations book is just, it's beautiful. Obviously,
he didn't write it as a book. I think that's the thing. It was just notes for himself. He wrote it for himself, and and thankfully it got taken down and someone compiled it, and we received the benefits from that.
And during a time when the entire empire was hit by multiple wars, it was hit by plagues, and this guy didn't even talk about that. Like he just went on about his thoughts and penned down great. Like, to me, if that was crashing, like I'm still learning life, right? And if things are crashing, I'm like if I drop my plate in the morning full of my breakfast, I'm like, oh, this plate dropped. Like, I couldn't, something was buzzing next door, and I just write it. He's got a whole war. He's got all these things on his shoulder, and he's not even worrying about it. And
I think the thing is, like, maybe he would have been worrying, but it's a different type of, like, he didn't bow to the pressure of all that as well. So much of it reads as if, like, hey, I'm going to get through this. So it is sort of self-helpy in a way. And then so much of it is really like, I've experienced something similar to this before. Maybe it's a greater magnitude, but if I follow these principles, if I stay calm, if I, try and switch off as much as I can the emotional side of my brain, if I can, it's called meditations for a reason. He speaks so much about, looking outside of yourself and getting that, deep introspection, I guess, by moving outside of himself and looking within. So, I feel like it would be wrong to say he didn't have worries, but it's that he didn't act upon them. Is that he knew the mental techniques to avoid the bad decisions that can come from craving, falling into those desires to alleviate pain or alleviate suffering or alleviate whatever.
Yeah, man is affected not by the events that occurs, but the views that he has on them. That's one of his sayings, and it's a great saying to have. Like, the views that you take on things is everything. That's you can hold it and bear it on your shoulders, or you can not let it affect you. And I agree. He definitely had worries. Like, he's still got to deal with his people. He's got to save his people, and so on and so forth. But the understanding of this is what I'm understanding now, that what is written and the belief on what is written would last so long. And for me, I'm getting to that stage of also doing a library of thoughts. So you've seen, I think you've seen like, I've done a thought piece on my own thought, which is a smaller podcast.
The Hippocrates. Hippocrates, of course. And the Epictetus one. I think you had another one as well.
Yeah. So these little, so I take inspiration from that and the understanding that I think he knew ahead of time to keep the negative out. And this guy, I'm quoting him, and he's like 640 AD?
Yeah, I can't remember his exact dates. I've probably got it in my my book reviews here somewhere, but yeah, it was,
I'm pretty sure it's around there. And
2000, at least 2000 years ago.
And I'm quoting him. So I'm thinking now that same way. I'm like, I could like, because I was doing so I've gone full in content, right? So we've got sponsors now where, like, it's just thinking and understanding and achieving the goals that I want to achieve. And I was thinking, I'm quoting this guy so far back, and it'll be amazing if someone could come across someone journeying through philosophy. And that's been like, I've been like sparked by that. I'll be like, wouldn't it be cool if you could go back and see a guy learning types of philosophy and journeying through, my particular one is Stoicism, and journeying through the Stoic thoughts and understandings and bringing up his own thoughts and his own philosophy during a ridiculous digital time that we're in. Like, that would be cool. And that's what's cool to me, like understanding thoughts. And if I can pen that down and, later on in life, maybe someone comes across that, because I can go and do like my 9-to-5 job. Nothing wrong with the 9-to-5. If you believe whatever purpose you're in, that's your purpose. That's what you want to do. That's what you want to do. That's great. I believe in finding your purpose. I think a lot of people aren't in their purpose. However, purpose is hard to find as well. So credit to those who have found it. I find it cool if I can like do a timepiece like that and someone comes across it in future. Like, people will come across my interviews. I don't think I will ever stop doing interviews, but just these like meditation style thought pieces would be absolutely like amazing. And that's cool to me.
Yeah, there's something you can get. I've recently started another podcast called Value for Value, which is like, it's at the moment it's just a little side piece thing for me. And it's
marketing that enough.
Yeah. Man, it's the thing is, like, it's going to be my tester podcast in a way. So I'm really trying to really get as deep into the podcasting world as I can, which basically means you'll have to get to the self-hosting type of level, which means you're going to have to get to the coding type of level, which means I'm going to have to learn coding and then and then play around with these things. So a big thing with me is I don't want to disappoint people. And when I say I commit to something, like, I'm going to commit to it. And so I actually don't want to market it too much, because I don't want to make commitments I might not necessarily be able to keep.
That's respectful.
Yeah, but there was a couple of things you said there. One was, I guess, it almost sounds to me like you're trying to create your own. I have this thought as well, which is, each person sort of needs to create their own philosophy. I think we're at the age now where you're given this particular religion, or, back in the day, you only knew about Christianity and that was it. And obviously now with the internet, with the digital realm, you have information just flying in from every single side and place, and whether they want it to or not. So let's just say maybe that's what the New South Wales government was trying to do. They don't like what Diogo's saying. That stuff's going to get out there no matter what. Everyone has a phone, everyone can record things. You can't, if someone's at a protest, there's going to be video from that protest. Doesn't matter what they do. And I was just thinking, like, it almost sounds like you're in the process of creating your own philosophy. You're creating, in Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl makes a really good point, which is the guys who got through the most terrible times, the guys and girls, through the internment camps, through all of the most horrible things that the Nazis could do to them, they created their own meaning. They found their purpose in the most dire of circumstances. And it sort of sounds like you're doing a bit of both. You're creating your own philosophy and your own meaning at the same time. Does that sort of ring true to you? Does that spark any bells?
I'm definitely creating my own meaning. And I think it's Nietzsche, not that I follow his philosophies, is something about objective
I've got one of his books right here. Did a book review on tomorrow.
So he talks about there's you gotta create meaning, and there's meaning in life, and then you got to create meaning within. So I'm definitely creating meaning in terms of philosophy, and in terms of Christianity, and in terms of finding your own path.
Well, it might be worth noting that I only learnt this today when I was listening to your latest podcast, which is you've deep dive into basically all of the religious texts, from what I can tell. Like it sounded like you read the Quran, you read a lot of the Buddhist type stuff, you went to paganism, like things I didn't realize there was text for. What have you learned from that? And are you taking bits and pieces from all those different sorts of philosophy?
Yes. And I believe you need to take bits and pieces from everything. So I've always been one to try and look at everything without judgment at all. So, and take what I can from my understandings of it. And I think my background allows for that. And what I've learnt is that a lot of spiritual texts intertwine, very much so. So in spirituality, you have these spirituality in itself is very similar to esoterics and occultists to a way. So they have this understanding of thought and action reaction. So if you think of something, you will achieve it. And that entire thing came from a Russian woman in 1877, and you take these concepts, right, which seem to be new age. It seems like, this is, if you believe it, you can achieve it, and this is new. However, when you assess the Bible, right, for example, and you look at Christian texts, when Jesus is saying pray and then believe in your thoughts and you will achieve it, it essentially says meditate, think of what you want, and it'll come to you through the universe, for God is within you and everything is you. I am you and you are I. You're made in the image of me. So if you grab these texts and you read other texts without judgment, you see that they cross a lot of paths together. And when you add culture to it, when you add laws to it, when you add laws which become religion, it changed the fragments of the text, and it changed the fragments of what it was trying to tell people. And especially through time, it also changes text itself. Like Israel came about in 1947. It became Israel. It became the name Israel. Now you have the King James Bible. The name in text is Israel, but it was never Israel to begin with. So even text itself has changed. So when you do like add these societal things on top, it distorts it a bit. It distorts it so much so that when you say you're a Christian these days, people have a certain understanding. If you say you're Muslim these days, people have a certain understanding. You say you're Jewish these days, they have a certain understanding. But they all believe in God. Enoch was across all their texts. Sure, he had a different name in the Muslim text, but Enoch was there. Jesus is mentioned more in a Muslim text and praised more in the Muslim text than Muhammad is. There's all these intertwining factors between all of them, and spirituality is no different. It's nothing new under the sun. And the way that I've looked at a lot of these things, and I'm just a like podcaster, comedian, Brazilian jiu-jitsu guy. Like I'm not some priest that can like.
You got a good out there. You got a good out.
You know what I mean? Like this is like part of the Worth Protecting logo. And for those watching, for those listening, you got a sun on one side and you got the moon on the other. Then you got sandals in between, which is just walking, trying to understand life. That's what it is. And I find the Stoic philosophy a beautiful philosophy. And I don't think Nietzsche either. The history, these cultural things try to say that Nietzsche was against Stoicism, which he wasn't. Stoicism essentially saw the world for what it is. They saw the bad and they said, don't focus on that. Focus on what you can control. Nietzsche goes, okay, they've got that part. Look at envy. Envy is a big part. Like, you need to use envy. So focus on that bad and use that bad, right? So, for example, let's take Joe Rogan, for example. A Stoic will look at Joe Rogan and be like, if they want to start a podcast, they'll look at Joe Rogan and be like, oh, that's amazing. I want to do that. What can I do? What can I control to do that? Nietzsche will say, the Nietzsche philosophy will say, I'm envious of that. I envy that. I'm going to use this envy to create a podcast and go forward. It's just a different understanding, but at the end of the day, it's very, very like similar, and you can reach the same results with that. And that's philosophy. That's not religion. People might hear the religious side and be like, no, at the end of the day, they're looking at the same God, right? And the only ones that look at different gods is pagans. And when you look at pagans, every civilization before the Jewish religion said that they heard God and they're the chosen people, everything before that was pagan. So the Egyptians were pagan, the Greeks, Zeus, pagan, Hindus, that's pagan. Hindus are like anything that looks at multiple gods, that's paganism. To an extent, Christianity can be viewed as paganism because you're looking at the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's three. So it's always three gods. That's pagan. So I just look at these things, man, and I've viewed a lot, and you can be a Stoic and be a lot of other things, just like you can be a Buddhist and you can be a lot of other things. And I'm going to continue down the Stoic path. And if some type of philosophy, if I've come up with something that is beautiful and, great to the world, and that's amazing. And that's the greatest thing that you can possibly achieve in this world, to me, is coming up with your own philosophy, actually coming up with your own philosophy, not just like I do things different because it's cool.
Yeah.
But actually that is amazing. And it's hard to achieve. And you got to really look at yourself and life, and which is an incredibly hard thing to do in this day and age. But
yeah, and then being able to express that as a whole nother thing as well, because you want to create rules, you want to codify it, but man, you'll learn so much of your own inherent contradictions and the paradoxes and whatnot. It's actually quite. I was doing a bit of a deep dive last year into Buddhism, and so I really wanted to try and understand it a bit more. I've always aside from Stoicism, Buddhism's probably been the religion that's most appealed to me, just in terms of the outside perception of it. Diving deeper into it, you learn some things, some nuances you didn't know before. You learn some bullshit and dogma, which you also didn't know before. But what I actually found from that was it led me onto Taoism a little bit. So reading the Tao Te Ching. It's funny as you get older with time, like we were talking before. I read the Tao Te Ching in 2015, 2014. And I thought it was the biggest load of crap. I didn't understand the book at all. I thought it was stupid. What is this obscure language? It makes no sense to me. And then tackling it last year made me go I sort of get it now. I sort of get why it has the obscure language. It's trying to speak something to that. the master who does nothing leaves nothing undone. You know, you look at that and you're like, how does that make sense? Well, the master who does nothing, like he's not doing anything, but he's still doing something. It's nothing. It's like that paradox. And I find that there's that paradox in life is beautiful.
Did you know that's, I don't know how, did you know that a lot of, like I watch a lot of debates too, right? And a lot of religious debates. Something about, I've always been a guy that loves interviews, probably why I've moved like in life into podcasts. Like as a kid, I wouldn't like listen to music. I'd watch the artists have an interview. It's weird. So, and now I've been watching a lot of religious debates, and to the fragment of everything, that's what God is. For example, you got Muhammad Hijab, who's about to do a podcast. He did a podcast with Jordan Peterson that releases on the 13th of December. And it's essentially the first time that, you know, Jordan Peterson, they've done these entire pieces on Christianity.
Yeah, his like Bible series where he'll spend, 2 hours deconstructing the first paragraph from the New Testament or Old Testament.
And now you got Muhammad Hijab, who's this big intellect in the Muslim space, and he's going first time that Jordan Peterson's having a Muslim on. So that's very like interesting to me, just because it'll be, Peterson is amazing, and Muhammad Hijab has done big like debates atheists. And when he debates atheists, the fragment of understanding and then going to molecules and everything, at the end of the day, exactly what you said, nothing is something. And that's what they believe God is. So that's across a lot of religion. That's what's like beautiful about it. But it's been, as I said, it's been tainted, man. It's been tainted. And from the Buddhists, what did you find in the like looking into Buddhism? Because it's like, I see it as a way of life more than a religion, but they have a lot of like religion aspects to it.
Yeah. For me, what always really appealed to me about it was the balance, like the idea of balance, I guess, in that if you move too far in one way, you're going to fall out of, this is getting more into the way of Taoism. Like, you got to follow the way. It's not one particular end or the other, and it's not even being in the middle. Sometimes being in the middle means you have to, deviate to the side. So what really appeared to me was, some of the art and the aspects, I guess, like the non-violence aspect as well, which is, that's a lot in Buddhism. I feel it pops up a bit more. And then obviously meditation, just their thoughts on meditation, reading Meditations by Aurelius really was just making me think like, man, this is so similar to what some of the Buddhist teachings will say about, entering, devoting the time, the practice that is required. There's an element of not just being able to click into it. It's like, no, you have to sit down and you have to do your 10,000 hours of isolated practice if you want to get deep into this. Another core aspect for me is like, you can test this for yourself. You don't have to believe anything we say. Try out what we suggest, and if you find some practicality, some usefulness from this, i.e. meditation, and a lot of people do, you try it out and it sucks at first and you're struggling and you're like, what the hell is this bullshit? My mind keeps racing. I thought this was meant to help me stop my mind racing. And then you progress on a little bit, you get a bit further and you're like, see some glimpses of I guess like peace or tranquility, or just non having the monkey mind, I guess. It's just that ability to switch off for a little bit. I always like to say it's making myself stupid. I used to have a lot of problems as a kid because I would think too much, And so it's almost like a way of not thinking too much. That's my, layperson way of putting it. So those were probably the core aspects that I really found from it. And then tempering that with, I read some of the texts, like the scholastic texts, which are just so ridiculous. Like, monks can't do, they're so rigid. It's like monks can't do this, monks can't do that. And it gets bizarre. Like, monks aren't allowed to have sex with a woman with a gaping wound on a dead body, with female dragons, with it's insane. And so that was also a nice tempering, being like, okay, they didn't have it all sorted either. There's some room for me to add my own personality into this.
I hear. I love the. Does it go in? Are you going in or are you going out in Buddhism?
For me, I would say I'm diving inwards, if I had to say one of those two. Yeah. So an inward feeling process for me, for sure.
They say I think it's it was during the Tower of Babel. They were saying that if you can go out, and the whole concept is that everything's within. So if you're going out, it's like against, it was supposed to be against God, which is an interesting belief, because it's never ending. And so you can go out and out and out and out and out, and then it, like literally to infinity. But there's a whole like story of these giants at the time and all of this, like, but I'm saying, like, if you break it completely down, right, the what God was saying was just look within, because going out is against, it's like, it's the evil. The evil is going out because you're always going to continue to spiral. And then like, that's why a lot of the philosophies that I sort of go towards is interesting, that like Stoic, you can't control outer thoughts. Like you can't control what others think. You can only control what's within. So just be within and control what you can. Buddhism, you go within. And a lot of these is there is no answer out. The answer is in. So they put these whole philosophical, like, not philosophical, these, which to a lot of people is fictional stories together, and then deter people. However, when you look at the text and assess what it's actually saying, all it is actually telling you to sit still and assess yourself. And that's where you get your answers, and that's all you need to do. And the goal is to be content.
Yeah. And great phrasing there. Content, not happiness, because happiness is a completely different thing. Like you can chase happiness, and it can end in terrible circumstances. You can get on the bandwagon of trying, going for the next dopamine ruch, but
yeah, you can be damn zero, get a bunch of bitches on your lap, and then you're still not happy, you know?
You're flinging dollars in the club, you're doing whatever. And but chasing contentedness, I've never heard someone attempting that and failing, because it's like, you can't really do it. If you're trying to chase contentedness, it's like the act of contentedness is a still, like you said, and it's an inner type of quality, not an external one that you're chasing.
Exactly.
I wanted to ask you two aspects of that before we move on to maybe some like funner, lighter things. One was, I guess, a lot of Stoicism is pretty practical. Like you're I guess told, or you're suggested to really make this as practical as possible. Like, what are you actually doing in your life? Epictetus would say something like, don't show me your like the heavy weights that you can lift in the gym. I want to see your shoulders. Like, can you actually move them? I want to see the results of this training. So, what are some practical things that you do in your life that I guess help you on on your philosophy, on your journey, and what you're up to nowadays?
In the morning, man, like routine helps me a lot. And so just, you don't have to, you have to do it in the mind. That's what I'm like trying to do my best at. So every single day, just the whatever like is a negative, and it's very, 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 very hard to do, like trying to just give up what happened yesterday, because your emotions and like your ego and everything wants to hold on. Like it does not want to let go. So in the morning, just trying to give that up, and then just having a more routine where I'm based on myself. A lot of the time I was like a very big pleaser. Like I just wanted to like please people a lot. Like if my mate was like, let's do this, I'd be like, I'd feel completely guilty if I didn't do it. But now I'm like more content with it. I'm like, yeah, like this is like a journey that I'm going through. And I, you know, it's not everything will happen. And that's a big thing of like Stoicism. It's like it's what you can essentially do. So everything is happening, and in the mornings, I just try and understand that, and I'm trying to live this like it's going to happen right now. Like I'm trying to be as in the moment as I possibly can, which is very hard for me because I'm not a great meditator either. You're probably way better than me. I'm just not in general.
Debatable.
And having the thoughts that I have and being as courageous as possible is how I'm trying to live it. So I'm trying to assess courage. I think it's Marcus Aurelius who, what does he say? Sometimes, what was that? Sometimes even to live is an act of courage. And in this day and age, whatever you're doing, just know that it's an act of courage. Like be courageous in your each day, in your each step, in your each decision that you make. Don't think about it, overthink it, just live in it and be courageous in that decision. So I'm trying to give up my previous day and be courageous in my decisions on my day to day. That's the main aspects that I'm doing, and I'm trying to go inside more than I am outside to be as content as possible in my own thoughts. Those are the things that I'm currently practicing.
Yeah. Okay. Nice, man. Nice. You talked, I guess, sort of in reference to it there, which was, life is not always fine and dandy, and we each have our problems to varying degrees and whatnot. And depression is a huge one. And I don't know what the stats are, but I think nowadays it's like most people have experienced something that is they could resemble depression, like the idea of what depressive is. You talked in one of your latest episodes about how it was 50 Cent of all people who helped you get through a bit of an area. But I wasn't too sure of exactly what you were getting at and whether that helped or not, because it sounded like his advice was to push it down. Like, I don't have time to be depressed. I've got like all this stuff that I need to do. I have all these people depending on me, things like that.
Yeah.
Did that actually help, or was that a bad thing for you?
It helped. Understanding it depends, right? It helps for me. It might not help for all, because how it helped for me is because so at that stage in my life when it was pretty much everyone was it was almost like a depression wave. It was really weird. And a lot of friends of mine were like feeling depressed or in their own state, right? And just there was this energy down, and I felt that energy, and energies can bring you down, right? Just your friend group, if everyone's like they're like sitting down and doing nothing and hating life, like you're gonna be like, what are we doing? Like, what's going on? And at that time for me, I heard that depression is a luxury that I can't afford. And I had so many goals and like aspirations in mind. I come from like rural Brazil, and then I moved to favelas. Like we were very, very poor. Then I came to Perth, and then we were quite poor there. So, and then my aspirations was to come over to Sydney. And because I just also never really stayed in one place. This is the longest place that I've ever stayed at. And at the time, I heard that, and I was like, yeah, I got all these goals. Like, I need to do. Like, I ain't got like to be sitting around, to be sitting in bed and not doing anything, not reading, not doing anything, just sitting in bed and graveling in my sorrows. That's a luxury to me. I can't do that. Like, I got things to do. Depression is a luxury. And then via that frame of mind, like I was about to go boof, right? And via that frame of mind, I got to Sydney. And back then I hadn't finished high school. Like, we were very poor. Like, and I got to Sydney. I went to Ultimo TAFE, and then I didn't even do like any certs or anything. I went to a diploma class. I waited at the back, and then when they finished doing all the registrations, I went to the front. James, I'm not going to say your last name, but he was the teacher at the time, this old guy. And then he's like, well, do you have your Cert 3? I was like, no. Do you have your Cert 4? I was like, no, this is a diploma of business. Do you have a Cert 4? And I was like, I don't. And then I'll go, however, like I just moved here. This is all I'm going to do. And I did a little spiel. And he signed his name on me. And then he was like, this person that I never met just goes, I will sign my name next to yours, and you better pass this or else I'm fucked. So then, excuse me for swearing. And then I was like, I did it. I finished it, went to university, blah, 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 blah. However, then I developed my mentality. So what I had suppressed when I was ready for it didn't burst out. It wasn't like a massive like smash and my life is in pieces and everything like that. So depression is a luxury that you can't afford is a great philosophy if you're going to get yourself to a state where you're ready to deal with depression. So if you're not going to get to that state, you're going to bottle that and depression's going to destroy you. So it's a hit and a miss, and it depends where your mentality is at. And if your mentality is for growth, use that philosophy. Use the philosophy. Depression is a luxury. Don't afford it. You can't afford it. Just continue on your life. And when it hits you, you're going to be ready to deal with it. And that's the way that I took it. And it worked out for me.
Yeah, that's super, super interesting, man. You hit on something quite important, and I'll recommend this book to people. It's called The Noonday Demon by Andrew Solomon. Huge book. I think it's like 900 pages or something. And it's all about depression. And, he goes through his own episodes that he's had in his life. So it's like personal. It's got a lot of the science. The book's slightly old. I think it was from the early 2000s. So some stuff obviously needs a bit updating with the latest SSRIs and whatnot, but he goes through like how it can play in like the social realm. And one of the big things is it is infectious. If you are hanging around with depressive people, like it's going to seep into your life as well. So that concept of the energy of it is totally real. Like it's not, I don't even think that's up for debate. It's just science now. If you're depressed, your friends are probably going to be more depressed than average, and vice versa. So
and do you feel if you look into depression, you will intake? So I haven't. This is like, well, just what I've experienced in life. I haven't read any books on depression, or I haven't like looked at like if it's a chemical imbalance. I haven't looked at depression as a whole. What does the book go into? So it does frameworks and explains how he was depressed.
I mean, like I said, it covers a lot of different things. I'll see if I can find the notes while I've got my book here, where I keep all like my little book review notes.
I sort of told you to repeat what you said just then, eh?
One of the things from it is I really got that. So I used to think that I was depressed when I was younger, and I after reading this, I said, you know what, I don't think so. I think I had like a mild depression, because what he got into with this book was just it was sort of like unbelievable in the scale of it, in how intense it went, how his own thoughts sort of, it's almost like it went beyond it went beyond suicidal. Like it went to an even darker place than that. Which like that was sort of the feeling tone I got from it. I found my little notes here. So I said it was like a sort of part memoir, part tome. He himself had 3 depressive episodes. Actually, it wasn't 900, but the pages I think were like double lined, or like super thin. So I think that's why I said that. It was actually close to like 450. And he talked a lot about like objective facts. So there's like the treatment, there's talking therapy, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. That one's very useful. Obviously, antidepressants, the ECT, electroconvulsive therapy. So this is where you actually get shocked. And so you might have heard about this back in the day of like the bell jar. So Sylvia Plath type people who, it's an actual, what I didn't realize was that it's an actual therapy. Like it actually would help people. So getting shocks to the brain can alleviate some of the symptoms. Obviously it causes.
So it is a chemical imbalance?
A lot of it is, yes, a lot of it is, but it's not just that as well. So there is a reason why there's so many different types of SSRIs. So that's the serotonin, something like intake inhibitor, like, antidepressants essentially. There's a whole lot of them because everyone's brain is slightly different. So what works for one person doesn't necessarily work for another person. And then there's the more subjective stuff. So this is like, he had sort of like some of the ethics with regards to how should people be forced to take, antidepressants, for example, if they don't want to, if the side effects are too bad. Is that better for them in society as a whole? Those sorts of things. Another good book is, and then it plays into a lot of other mental health aspects. So is one of the problems is it's so complex. You can't just fix like depression. You also need to fix their alcohol addiction, their drug addiction, their turbulent family history, some of the trauma, emotional trauma and physical trauma they've had in the past, PTSD. Depression is like an ugly word in the sense that it sounds easy. Like, oh yeah, you've got depression, you can kind of fix that. But it's like, no, you got to fix your whole fucking life, man. Like that, you've probably if you've got a really bad one, you need to fix a lot of things, and that's not easy. That's not a like, here's some drugs and you're going to be okay sort of thing. It's, you got to build up from the ground, and it's going to take years and years and years.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of antidepressants. I'm not. Yeah, I don't advocate for it. I think it's essentially what similar to that quote, but just in pill form. Like, you're suppressing things until you're masking things.
Yeah. What I got from the book was it's useful. There's definitely some people who should be on antidepressants, but as a blanket coverall, the opioid epidemic in the States sort of attests to this, and their pharmaceutical system's pretty whack from what I can tell. Here's a little fact for you. Only them and New Zealand are the two countries where pharmaceutical companies are allowed to advertise on TV and advertise their products. Nowhere else in the world can you do that.
Really?
Yeah, which creates some weird things, because then they will, it's sort of like a competition, like, the marketing aspect, advertising gets into it, and that's just corrosive to so many things.
Yeah.
He says that they're necessary for some people. For some people, they're not necessary, and it always seemed to be like, take them if you're in a really bad place, so you don't do harm to yourself or to others, but you don't want to be dependent on them if it's not 100% necessary. You want to try and fix some things so you can get off them as best possible.
Yeah, it sounds. I say read some philosophy, but yeah, the more people that are it's very hard. It's a very hard situation, because everyone goes through their own mental journey, and each of them have different circumstances in their lives as well. But a big part of it, I do believe, is mentally, and where you're mentally at. And to me, you can find in history things that people have gone through that are very similar, and you just want that understanding when you're in that state. Well, I did anyway. And that, I think, is connection. And the reason why you'd need pills is when you're very disconnected from yourself, and you're drinking, and you're like on drugs, and you don't know your meaning in life. You don't know your purpose in life. You'll go on a bender and you say, I'll never do that again. And then you'll do it again. And then your mental is actually battling with your own mental. And that could be when you need a pill, because you can't really assess yourself. But it's hard for me to even at that stage, even. I'm sure the book says you need to take it, the book says it, but for me, yeah, look into philosophy. I don't know. I don't think anyone should be on antidepressants, but hey, he's done more research than me.
Yeah, he did a lot of research.
Book is definitely smarter on the topic than me. So
that's right, man. Like, if you're a podcaster and you're not making ungrounded statements, like, what kind of podcaster are you, man? Like, yeah,
exactly.
I'm speaking of, man. So let's get into some lighter stuff. That was getting a bit heavy. What's the biggest difference you've noticed? Because you used to do it with Lyle, I believe was his name, right? Lyle.
Yeah. Lyle.
What's the biggest difference you've noticed since sort of becoming like a solo podcaster?
I have. That's a great question, dude. That is a great question. When you're doing it with someone, you need to rely on that person for time. You need to rely on that person, to whatever fragment of you is in your internal imagination that person should be providing, and that's life as well. That that goes into it as well. So if you're doing something and you feel like, this is with any partnership, business partnership, friendship, comradeship, any type of relation where there's two people involved. If you feel everything goes into it mentally and so on and so forth. But doing it by yourself, all you have to blame is yourself. So if something doesn't get done, you blame yourself. And that's the easiest aspect of it. Like there's heaps that is really fun with two people, like the banter and being able to bounce off one another in interviews and so on and so forth. That's great. Like you're not constantly thinking and having these mental hurdles to get over. Like you can rely on someone, and that's a beautiful thing. So the biggest difference is that I think it's being able to put the sole responsibility on myself and taking myself accountable and cutting no corners. If it's not done, it's not done because of me, and I'm the one to blame for it.
Yeah.
You said we were going to get lighter.
Yeah. Well, I was
with the fucking deep question like that.
I'll switch it around on you, which is that the success is also due to you. So you have no one else to account for this success. That's one of the things where if it starts picking up, or you start having increased interactions with people, like whatever your goals are as a podcaster. For some people, it's views. For someone more like me, it's I'm really trying to emphasize the interactions and the community aspect more. That's more whatever the metrics. When you're doing it by yourself, I'm not ever going to be. I suppose I will be wondering, like, was it Juan that made like the Mere Mortals popular? How much contribution was
natural.
me?
Yeah, it's natural. It's natural to have that, and you don't know when all mental hurdles come into it. But yeah, you're right. If all the negatives you blame on yourself, but also the positives you can credit yourself, and you can say, you know what, I did that. That is nuts. That like I actually did. Like I actually interviewed Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of mRNA vaccine technology. His only Australian interview was with me, and I did that. There's no one else. So yeah, you do look at the flowers of your work as well, and that's an amazing thing as well.
Yeah, super cool, man. You mentioned you're from Brazil. You were saying you were just outside of Rio. When did you actually come to Australia?
Came over when I was 10. So yeah, I come from rural. I come from a farm. There was 7 of us that lived in a 2-bedroom spot in a farm. Milk cows, sold cows. That's what my family were doing. Big disabled uncle that lived with us, and we just shared that 2-bedroom, and no stove. You had just like rocks, not rocks, but no electricity. Didn't know my old man. The old Brazilian stories, and moved to the favelas when I was young. Still remember it a lot. When we go back, I still go back to it. Actually, last time I was back to, do you want a story? I go back, bro. I go back, right? And I was at a park, essentially like on the hill, like there's the favelas, like hills, right? And then this dude comes down, like I got my like little sister there as well. And then this dude comes down on a bike with this other dude in front of the bike. And he gets to the park, and I was like, Ashley, come here. And I grab her and I put her behind me, right? This bloke, right, gets off his bike, like they're yelling and shit, right? And then he gets off his bike. He comes over to the park, and I knew this was going to happen. Like I felt it. That's why I was like, get back. And then he comes over to me, and then he's just like it's just staring at me. And I'm like, just what can I do? I'm not going to like, all I can do is just stare back. Right. And then he goes, Australia. And I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing? Like, what's going on? And then he's like, pulls out his fucking gun like this. And he's like, I know who you are. I know your uncle. I know you were born here. But just know that I'm the new guy on the block, like on the favela hill. And then all this time I'm thinking, bro, you came up riding a push bike. Like, what do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, get out of here. Like, what? That was in my mental the whole time.
Oh my God.
And then he got in his push bike and fucking
dude, it's good oh man, I hope you didn't like crack a smile or laugh in his face.
Oh bro, I tried. I was just in shock, but all in my head was that. That's all that was in my head. I'm like, you rode a push bike. Like, what do you mean? Like, what's going on? But yeah, that was my last experience. But in saying that, I've never had any issues in Brazil. Like, Brazil's amazing place.
Yeah.
And it's just tough for some, and some people just want to put their stamp down, and they get jealous when there's a foreigner, especially in a place that usually you don't. But I've been going there my whole life, so they know that I actually am from that little location. But yeah, I moved over when I was around 10 to Perth, and I love Perth. I love Western Australia. Western Australia is a gem of a place in the world, the most isolated city in the world. And it's beautiful. It's like this big country town city. And I really dislike how people that are from Perth absolutely bag it out, and they like hate it, and they give it like, it's usually with anyone that's from anywhere is like, yeah, this place is bad. Like,
could be trying to protect it, hide the secret of how good it is.
That's true. Actually, I never thought of it like that. That's a beautiful way of thinking it. I like it.
Yeah, I've never been to Perth. It's definitely on my to-do list, mostly because man, I love Brisbane. Like, Brisbane's treated me so well, and of all the Australian cities, it sounds like Perth is pretty much the closest to Brisbane, in terms of size, sort of like location wise, beaches, those, river coming through the town, the city.
Are you born there? So. You born there?
In Brisbane? Yeah. So I mean, like, it's weird. I think Brisbane also is, here's another fact. I'm not 100% sure of this one. I think it used to be true, was Brisbane is the largest city in terms of size, in the sense that the actual boundaries of the Brisbane city, like the CBD, extend really far out. I think I was born in Brisbane, even though I was like, my town, my suburb is like 20 minutes, 25 minutes drive closer to the Gold Coast. Yeah. So I think that's a fact. I remember hearing that somewhere, but I can't verify that anymore.
Hey, take it.
Yeah, for sure. I like, just touching upon South America, man. Like I mentioned before, I've got this big ass map behind me. I traveled through large portions. Unfortunately, I didn't get to Brazil. Part of the reason for that was I just didn't want to learn Portuguese. I had like my Spanish was relatively good, and I just went like, oh, I can't handle learning another language, right? Not that it's 100% necessary, but I would feel guilty going to, spending more than a month in Brazil, for example, and not trying to learn and give it a crack and whatnot.
Yeah, I understand that. Did you do ayahuasca?
No, that's too heavy for me, man. I did go to Peru. I met a couple of people who did it, but ayahuasca's, man, the psychedelics intense, man. So I did try some mushrooms in Mexico and like the Magic Mountain there, and that was an amazing experience. But my general philosophy with psychedelics is like you got to treat them carefully. They're powerful stuff, and so yeah, doing it like for fun or just willy nilly is yeah.
You can't do ayahuasca for fun.
No, none of that experience sounds fun, man. the puking, delving deep into yourself. Like although man, like psychonauts, those people who are like
psychonauts, what's that?
So it's a psychonaut is a person who basically is like an experimenter, a traveler into the world of psychedelics. So these are typically people who will be like, whatever the normal mushroom dose is, I think it's like 2 grams, they'll take 20. These are the people who will, they will go into the world of, how far can my mind take me sort of thing. Someone like that,
that's what we were talking about earlier. A lot of text is saying it never ends out and everything's like in.
Yeah,
that's what we're talking about, mate. But yeah, those people, that's intense, dude. I can imagine that. That's wild. Like
next level.
If they can do that, like living in normal reality.
People never cease to surprise me, man. Like there's always like the next person doing like you think someone's reached the boundaries of like physical boundaries and mental boundaries, and then someone's like, hold my beer, watch this shit. I'm gonna go next level.
100%. I went to Peru. I went to Cusco up in the mountains. Nice. Beautiful, man. Beautiful place. I went to Rainbow Mountain. And it's cool, like being in high altitude and like having to deal with it. Like we take for granted just walking around and breathing normally. Like when you get up there, it's like you got to take altitude pills, and you got to like, I'm against taking like pills and that, but you got to take it to like or you have that tea, which is like the cocaine leaf tea. It's
the cacao leaves. You just chew on it.
And then that's supposed to help your imbalance. But how nuts is that you walk high enough and just you're out of balance? Like it's a weird thought. Like it's a weird thing. It's so normal to people. People are like, you just climb a mountain. That's altitude, bro. Like, of course. But think of the actual what it is. It's amazing.
Yeah, I was in Guatemala in the main town. Oh, geez, what am I forgetting the name of it? It starts with an A, and it's a couple of 1,000 meters up, and I was probably the fittest I've ever been. I was doing like 2 or 3 hours of handstands every day. I was doing like 2 or 3 hours of stretching every day. I was going nuts, man. Like I just had all the time in the world. And
what do you mean you're doing 2 and 3 hours of handstands?
Yeah, man, dude, I'm still doing that nowadays, man.
Hold on, bro. What are you talking about? So you mean?
So like I will go like nowadays, for example, I went to the park and I'm really trying to learn the 1-arm handstand at the moment. So like I can do a strict handstand for, my max is 99 seconds. So a minute and a half and a bit. And yeah, man, like it's just like anything. It's like Brazilian jiu-jitsu. You could do it for ages. I would probably get gassed out within like 10 minutes. But you build up the tolerance. You just keep going and going. And you're like, oh shit, I can do this next thing. I can learn this next thing. And that's what I'm like with handstands, man. I've found my passion, I guess, in terms of physical exercise. That's what I want to do. I want to be able to like just get up into a 1-arm handstand, no matter the time, no matter the place, and just boom, like hit it. I think it's one of the most visually impressive things you can do.
Wow, that's sick. It's sick. So good. So good. I can't I can't. handstand.
Yeah, man.
So that's why I'm so surprised and amazed by it.
It's super fun. I actually had a dude on the podcast, Miguel Santana, he's probably like one of the best out there. And I met him randomly here in Brisbane. Of all things, it was like a Thursday afternoon, and it's just me and him at the park. And he just comes along, and I was like being chatty. I was like, "Oh, what's up, man?" No idea who this dude was. And then he just like gets up into a one-arm handstand. I think that's what inspired me, man. Like just seeing someone doing something so visually impressive in front of you, and you just realize like, oh my God, like this is the coolest shit out.
Yeah. 100%. And that's a good attitude to have. Just like that impressed me and that inspired me. I want to do that instead of like, I wish I could do that. That like, I wish I could. Like,
Yeah.
Your thing was like, yeah, that's so sick. Like, credit to him. I'm gonna do that. That's cool.
Yeah. When did you get into BJJ? What was your starting point for that? Did you start it in Brazil?
No. It'll be. I've always actually rejected it. I don't know why. I rejected a lot of things Brazilian. When I first came here, I came to a straight English speaking school, and then I would go to my mom because I didn't know how to speak English. And then I'll go to my mom and I'll be like, I'm not speaking Portuguese anymore. That's it. I'm finished. I'm finished speaking Portuguese. That's it. Finish him. I'm finished.
And then mom teaches you lessons like, whoosh.
Yeah. And credit to her, like I'd get home and I'd speak in English and she'd speak in Portuguese. So it sort of worked out because I'm still fluent in Portuguese, but she still can't speak English. So I don't really get it. It didn't work on her end, but that's just South American moms, I guess. I always rejected these Brazilian things. So I rejected capoeira. I rejected Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So initially I went into karate when I was about 14. And then I went into Muay Thai. Then I went into, when I came to Sydney, I did a bit of boxing. And then when Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu appeared itself, I was like, it's one of those arts that I love chess, right? Absolutely love chess. At school, I was part of the chess club.
Nice.
And we'd go like, because people thought chess came at a weird thing. People thought like, well, I don't know if people thought, but I thought people thought that I was dumb because I couldn't speak English. So I found that chess, and I found when I looked at chess, and you can only really look at these books and that, I found that this was regarded as this sport of intellect, and it was this intellectual game. And it is an intellectual game, but I was like, you know what? You think I'm dumb? This is my own psyche. I'm going to beat you all at chess. So then I got like a little chess award and everything. So I've always loved chess. So then later on in life, when I came to jiu-jitsu, I appreciated the art more than it's just something that's Brazilian. So I was rejecting it at the start. And then when I came to it, it was about 5 or so years ago. And I was like little on and off. But once Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu clicks for someone, a lot of anyone that's Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like listening to this will know if it clicks, dude. And it's an amazing sport. You can do it for so long. It's not like, and I've always done like combat sports, which is, combat sports, like you can get that one punch. You can be like really bad and then get in a gym and then swing a haymaker, swing a roundhouse and accidentally connect. And then you've dropped a person that's been doing it for like 7 years, like Jake Paul and Tyron Woodley. I don't know if you even know that analogy, but the guy was a UFC champion for so long. And then Jake Paul comes in as a boxer, and because they're boxing, it's a whole different thing. So that's why he's able to do it. But with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there is no chance in the world that you will go there as a white belt and you will tap out a black belt. Like the percentage of that is minuscule, and I don't even know if there's actually a percentage there.
Yeah.
and the guy can be like 60 something, and you can come in as like a 20-year-old that's just been, you come in as a 38-year-old that's just been done a whole cycle of roids as a white belt, and you'll still get destroyed. Like, I still get destroyed. It's that beautiful of an art. And that's what drew me further into it. When I could conceptualize that the art is essentially human chess, and it helps you think like moves ahead, and they call it the gentle art. And you can't just get that one punch and you don't get concussed. It's a game of like humans, and it's a puzzle of humans. And it's whoever understands position and understands moves ahead of the other person. And yeah, that just, when I put that into frame, I was like, yeah, this is amazing. This is what I just want to do.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. I love how life has a way of almost showing you the things that you should be doing. Like, you can fight it all you want, but I'm the similar with philosophy, man. Like, I have purposefully stayed away from philosophical books for ages because I thought, like, they're stupid. Like, I don't want someone who's sort of like pretentious telling me what they think about the world. It didn't make sense. And then, yeah, just a lot of the reading I've done recently, and then like it just keeps cropping up, and I'm like, oh, there's a niche book. All right, I'll try some niche. So it's like you gradually get into these things, and you'll rail against something when you're in your like early 20s, and then next thing you know, you're doing that same thing. I really don't like to say I'm never going to do something, because I've learned my lesson, man. Like, every time I say that, I end up doing it. Never going to get in a long distance relationship. Like, next thing you know, bam. Yeah. All that sort of stuff.
100%, dude. 100%. And it's interesting. Who was talking about, I think Epoch Rising was talking about a loop, something about loop.
Douglas Hofstadter.
Looping.
Yeah.
Yes. Looping. And then that book that I want to read, Breaking the Loop. And it's if you have something negative in your life that continues to loop over, there's with your mentality, really, you can break it. But I just want to read what he has to say about it. I think I conceptually understand it, but it would be cool to understand what he has to say. Yeah,
for sure. You're a very well-read dude, Diogo. So two questions for you. They're slightly different.
Mate, you're way more well-read than me.
If you're smashing down some of the religious texts, you gotta have read a bit of fair stuff. What's maybe like your favorite book that you've ever read, or favorites? And a slightly different question is like, what's the most impactful, or the most the one that's changed you the most in the physical world, i.e., like you've taken something from it and implemented it into the world?
Well, I'll give you three. And number one, I can just knock out the park with both those questions, which is Meditations. If no one's read that, that's the one. That's key, man. That one is amazing. But yeah, Aristotle's like physics. What's some decent ones? Laws of Human Nature is Robert Greene.
Yeah, you can't really go wrong with any of his books, to be honest. They're all The Red Queen is right up there in my best list as well, probably top 10.
Yeah, 48 Laws of Power really, because I wasn't a great reader as a kid either, so it's sort of like it's hit me when I read that book, 48 Laws of Power, and it's like two books in one to an extent, because you've got like the text in the middle and the side you've got all
those side notes are brilliant.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Art of War.
Yeah.
Art of War. So you reference a lot of Art of War in there. So that's a fantastic book. I'll probably put. I probably wouldn't. I'll put on Laws of Human Nature. That's a massive book. They've got a condensed version of that. I say 48 Laws of Power. So meditations, 48 Laws of Power, because it changed my reading in general. And then I read the 50th law because 50 cents was impactful for me as well, you know. There's the old philosophy books, but what's something like more new age that's interesting? Not Halliday, because you've already got Marcus Aurelius.
Whatever's good, man. Whatever's good.
Yeah, and
we can come back to that sometime.
Who's the third book? The third book. Just go read, like, I say go read like metaphysics. Go read that. I reckon Aristotle. Go read that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I'll add that. I actually haven't read any Aristotle, so I'll have to give it a shot. I'm in my little philosophy kind of binge, so it sounds like it'd be perfect for it.
Some bit of Plato.
Yeah, a little bit. I read Republic. That was a bit hard going. I like books where it's sort of dumbed down in a way, but it can get deep. Yeah, I have a problem when the book is obscure, and some of them need to be obscure. I totally get that, but other times, like I was reading Martin Heidegger recently, and it's supposedly philosophy, but for me it was closer to poetry, and just really, like, I have no idea what's being said here. Just really, really hard.
Yeah, physics and metaphysics pretty
dense.
tough. I think they got new versions of them though.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's just because of the words and the type of, you know, you can read what's it called? It's by Adam Smith, The Wealth of Nations. A lot of the concepts in it are relatively easy. Like I'll listen to like a YouTube video explaining it, and I'm like, man, there's the easiest stuff out. But because it's written in that sort of old timey English, a lot of like thou and ye type things makes it hard. Hey, makes it really hard. But language is a funny thing, man. I've learning Spanish, I'm trying to learn some German at the moment, and you get to understand a lot about how you communicate and how important words are as well when you're playing around with them, which is, I think, also why I like reading so much, because it's just words, just language, but in an easy to digest format. Doesn't have all the nuances of accents and all those sorts of things.
What would you say would be a big goal for you?
Big goal?
Like if you've left your life behind, right? Like I said earlier, like I was all in the 9 to 5 and everything, and doing stuff with IT and everything. But to me, leaving like a whole thing of thoughts and someone, not just discussions, but someone going through the Stoic philosophy, I find that cool. If you 100 years from now left something in your life, what would it be? So you can look at it as a goal forward, which is the same thing. It's
one thing which I'm trying to work on a lot is there's a couple of words just mixing together, which I really like. So I think for me, it would be something like, I would love for someone to look back and just be like, he was undeniably good. Like, he undeniably made the world a better place. And that's a tough one, because everyone has their own idea of how one might do that. So for some people it could be creating a revolution and, overthrowing their corrupt government or something like that. That's nice until it leads into the type of like USSR, and then you've got, the sort of gulags and those sorts of things. So for me, I would love to be able to find the things in life which basically any reasonable person could look at and say, like, he's doing a good thing. Like that, what he's doing there doesn't have any unforeseen repercussions. It's not, gratifying something just for himself and serving only himself. Like it's helping some other people as well. It's something where there's no hidden costs to it, and I'm either unwittingly or willingly, pushing them aside and saying like, oh, hey, I'm doing this thing. Maybe someone's getting hurt in this process, but that's whatever. That's just the price you pay. I don't want that. I'd love to create a life where someone could look at it and, a reasonable person could look at that and say like, yeah, he did good. And whatever good is and how that works, that's a process for me to try and find. And, that's a process of me looking at myself, understanding what I'm capable of, and then also what we as humanity regard as a good thing, so it's a lot of introspection, I guess, in my part. And then the critical aspect of that is also putting it into practice. So if I find something, so one of them I can say is giving blood and plasma. There's no way I can really do wrong with that. The only way I can do wrong is if, I contracted some sort of disease or something and then knowingly gave that out to other people. But for me, it's like this last year, I tried to make myself, cultivate some generosity, because I was never particularly generous in like, the 27, 28 years I lived before. So I was like, what are some things I can do to be generous? And so I did some volunteering. I went out and, I did some volunteering for random stuff where, it's not skilled, some more stuff where I'm spending some serious time. And the one thing that stuck with me was like, I can give plasma, which is, I have to devote 3-4 hours of my time every second Monday, every fortnight. But that's something I can do, and no one can really take that away from me and say you're doing bad by doing that. So identifying more things like that in my life and then putting them into practice, making sure, hey, you go every second Monday and you give plasma. Like that's something that you do now. And yes, it'll maybe require some sacrifices, but hey, that's what it takes to do good in the world.
Do you good is subjective, right?
Super subjective. So it's, that's one of the things where it's really hard. It's really, really hard. And, that requires me to look at maybe from the point of view of a Latino, or from the point of view of someone someone rich living in the developed world, and, their life's fine and dandy for the most part. They don't have, their issues are side effect issues of maybe like obesity, because you have too much plentiful stuff, the stress from having too much money or things like that. But then also from the guy in rural, the rural Peruvian, and what he's doing in the world, and then, trying to look at a lot of side of things and then be like, okay, what can I do that both of them would say, yeah, you know what, if he's doing good, at least he's not doing harm as well. That might be the other aspect of it, because that's an important aspect of life as well. It's, yeah, maybe this sort of Jordan Peterson-esque, if you can't do good, at least just make sure you're not doing bad, and that's sometimes just as useful as saying, subjectively what's good. Maybe that's harder to say, but maybe it's easier to say what's bad. And okay, all right, if I can identify it, don't do that then.
Yeah. Peterson's great, eh? His book,
brilliant guy.
Yeah, his books are so, they're basically impactful. It's, if that's like a weird, they're basically like they're impactful in a basic form.
Do you know? For him, I mean? He's one of the people which is he's had a huge influence on my life in 2017 when I started finding him on YouTube, which was actually how I first got into podcasting. His lectures can get complex as hell, but like his first book, the 12 rules, is just, it's like, it speaks to a broad range of people, and it's I don't know, I feel like it's the character of an individual that's like, oh, I hate Jordan Peterson. It's like, what do you mean? Like, have you actually like listened to the guy? Like he speaks. Yeah, I like Jordan Peterson. Yeah, he's a weird one because he's had a huge influence on my life, and I can't even really say why. It's like just listening to all of his stuff helped me somehow, but I'm not exactly sure what it was that he did. But I do know that it was impactful, and even when I go back and listen to his stuff nowadays, which is not as frequent as it used to be, I you still see those glimpses of like, man, he's got something in him. He's got a way of communicating, the way he thinks and the way he expresses himself. All of that combined has an impact on, and I would say a good impact for me at least.
Yeah, and we got to thank Carl Jung for that.
That's it. Well, you got to thank everyone, man. Piaget, Carl Jung, Nietzsche, Solzhenitsyn. All those people. He's I'd hate to ask him the book question. If I did, I'd be like, all right. If I had a podcast with him, I was like, all right, just list a couple of books, and then that's like podcast done. He'd just speak for hours.
100%.
Yeah. All right, man. I've taken up so much of your time, and I'm glad I have, because this was super, super cool. My last one that I wanted to ask you about, just end us off on a real fun note. What gets you excited, man? What's going on in your life that you're looking forward to, that's giving you meaning? And yeah.
Not going into space.
Okay. All right. Can you elaborate on that?
That gets me super excited, dude. Like, I don't want to go to Mars, man. Like, there's nothing there. Like, I think like Earth is amazing, and I think that during this time, people have gotten more into nutrition, which is beautiful. Like, people have gotten connected more with whatever religion that they subscribe to. They've gotten to become a lot higher in themselves. If they enjoy one thing, they, dug a little deeper into that. And that's a beautiful thing. And people that are on similar frequencies have connected and aligned a lot more across the globe, and I think that's beautiful, and I think we have a lot more work to do on Earth, and I'm excited to help the world with that job.
Beautiful, man. Perfect place to end it, Diogo. Thanks so much for joining me. Where can people, if they want to hear more of your philosophizing, your stoicism, your thoughts, your conversations that you're having with people, where can they go, man?
Go to worthprotecting.com.au and you'll find everything there, the 5-8 Take podcast.
Perfect.
That's pretty much it.
Awesome, man. We'll have to do this again soon. It's I can't believe we haven't done it before. This was so much fun.